1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Hey everybody, welcome back to Swiftlessons for another lead guitar tutorial. In today's session, I'm going to be breaking down a complete blues guitar solo in the key of D major. And I'm also going to use this session as an opportunity to introduce to you the amazing Spark amplifier by Positive Grid. Now, when it comes to guitar amplification, I've always been a little bit of a purist. For the last 15 years or so, I've been using a Fender Supersonic as my main playing amp. Recently, I've been more interested in using my Fender Princeton, a 74 Princeton. But when I started seeing players on Instagram like flawlessly recreating tones from Eddie Van Halen and Slash and David Gilmour and other players, I thought to myself, wow, I really need to get my hands on one of these things. So via a USB cable, I'm able to connect the Spark directly to my Mac and use it as an audio interface, which is amazing. So I'm recording directly out of the Spark into my DAW, which is Logic Pro. And from there, I can use the Spark as an instrument. It's also going to be playback, and alternatively, I can also rely on my traditional studio monitors. Okay, now jumping into the really fun part, connecting to the Spark app, which is amazing. It's very easy to connect to. Just pull it up and hit connect. All right, it's going to find your Spark amp. Successfully connected. Now, once inside, you're going to discover dozens and dozens of fantastic presets. You can even customize your own. And for today's lesson, I'm going to go up here, scroll over to Blues, and select Country Road. That's my personal favorite. I'm going to be using that for today's lesson. Now, if you are interested in just having a quick jam, there are some great presets just built right into the hardware. Okay, a close look at the fretboard. Now getting started learning some licks. I'm going direct out of the Spark into my audio interface, and I'm doing that by converting the headphone jack to 1/4 inch. Okay, that's going to allow me to record my voice and the guitar at the same time, and it's going to sound great. Okay, so our first line of tablature, once again, is going to sound like this, real slow. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so kind of a call and response, two variations of the same lick. Okay, so we're getting started stacking. I'm on the 10th fret of the B string and the G string. Now I like to do a little slight bend there on that G string, or I like the vibrato. Alright, from there I'm going to play a little walk-up lick, pulling off 12 down to 10 on the D string, going to the 12th fret of the A string, and then walking chromatically on the D string, 10, 11, 12, and then some heavy vibrato. You put that together and we have classic blues lick right there. Okay, counting it in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I can slap the strings now, and then if I like, I can fret the chord. That is if I'm playing just by myself and I want to keep my place in the progression, I can slap the strings and then fret a D7 chord shape. I've got the thumb on the low E string, 10th fret, the D note root, and then I've got frets 10, 11, and 10 on the D string, G string, and the B string. Blocking the A string and the high E string. Okay, so that's two measures of music right there. Slap strum. All right, now moving into measure 3. We're going to play basically the exact same lick with a slight variation. And then return back to that D7 chord shape. So it starts off the same way. Stop right there on the 11th fret of the D string and play the G string 10th fret, that minor third. Go into the root note, the 12th fret of the D string with some vibrato. Okay, put that together and we have. All right, now we can move on to line number 2 of our tab, where we're going to turn up the heat a little bit. Okay, so what you've learned so far is a great way to play over top of the 1 chord, in this case in the key of D, because we are resolving on the root note D, 12th fret of the D string. All right, now the next lick is going to be used to transition from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. Okay, so D7, go into the chord, in this case G9 or G7, the 4 chord in the key of D. This lick sounds like this. All right, one more time real slow. All right, get that into your ear. It's a little bit of a complicated lick. All right, that note right there is the 4 in the key of D. Okay, so I'm playing a G note, which matches the G7 chord shape. Very, very important. Okay, so I'm starting off on the 12th fret of the D string. All right, I'm still playing over top of D7, so I'm going to outline that chord. All right, by playing. All right, so that was 12 on the D, 10 to 11 on the G string with a hammer. All right, then on the B string, 10 to 12 with a hammer. And then to the 10th fret of the high E string, the root note of the D chord. All right, then we're going to create a pattern scaling down. 13 down to 10 on the B string with a pull off. So far you have. All right, then go into the 12th fret of the G string and back to 10 on the B. All right, you put that into the mix and we have. One more time. All right, then finish in this measure, 12 down to 10 with a pull off. All right, then to 12 on the D. All right, so adding that into the lick, we have a full measure of music there. One. All right, then from there, getting into the next measure and the next chord in the progression, G9. All right, really digging into the string, 10 up to 12 with a hammer. Okay, some heavy vibrato. And then from there, you can strum the G9 chord shape if you want to state the context. Okay, so you put that together and we have 1 and... All right. From there, returning back to the 1 chord, D7, we're going to repeat our first lick. Okay, and a quick tip for that lick, if you want to, you can kind of double stop it. Okay, just by striking the 10th fret of the G string and B string together gives it a little bit more grit. Okay, so. All right, that gives us 2 lines of tablature. You put those together and we have a 1, D7, and G9. D7. Okay, now we're officially at line 3 of the tab. Looking at the second measure of this line, we're going to have a lick that's going to transition us to the 5 chord, A9. And it's going to be identical to the one that got us to the 4 chord, G9. We're just changing the end of it to accommodate the common chord, the 5 chord in the key of D. All right, so we're really learning how you can get a lot of mileage out of a lick just by changing the tail end of it. Okay, the lick's gonna sound like this real slow. All right, so right here, I'm playing the note that's gonna match the incoming chord. This is an A note, and it's matching an A9 chord shape. Okay, so you recognize this lick. It's identical to the one we played before, just a little bit different at the end. All right, instead of going to the 4, we're just gonna slide up a whole step above to the 5th interval, the 14th fret of the G string, and then vibrato on the 13th fret of the B string. Okay, so real slow. And then if you like, you can fret the A9 chord shape. Okay, so this is going to be the 12th fret of the A string, the 11th fret D, and the 12th fret of the G string, B string, and the high E string. A9. Okay, so far you have in this solo line number 1, D7. Transition into the 4. And getting back to the 1. Getting us to the 5. All right, now from there we're gonna have a special series of licks. And a turnaround to close up shop. Okay, so this is a fantastic way to wrap up a 12-bar blues guitar solo. So once again, real slow, if I'm coming out of that lick that got us to the 5 chord, A9, it's gonna sound like this. Here we go. All right, and that gets us into the turnaround. So, let's learn that little bit right there. I'm on the 12th fret of the G string. I'm gonna do a hammer pull, 12 up to 13, back to 12. Then I'm reaching for 15 on the D. Then on the G string, 12 up to 14. And then I need to go down to the minor 3rd with a slight bend. All right, so that was the 10th fret of the G string. Now, I love it when players kind of do a backslide into those positions. Okay, so. All right, then we're gonna play. Kind of reprising the idea that we had in our first lick. The pull off, 12 down to 10 on the D, 12 on the A, walking up on the D string, 10, 11, 12. And then go into the 10th fret of the high E string to start the turnaround. You put that together and we have. A little bit slower. Okay, now one last tip for this lick. If you want to get a more gritty, kind of fat double stop sound, you can actually bar across with the index finger on the 12th fret of the G string and the B string as you play that lick. So this lick becomes. All right, that's a nice fat sound. All right, so I'm including that B string 12th fret in that lick now. Once you've walked up to the 12th fret of the D string, all right, you can move into one of the most classic turnaround sounds we have available. Okay, so I played 12 on the D, and then using hybrid picking, I'm grabbing the 10th fret of the high E string. All right, then it's gonna be 10 and 10 on the same strings, plucked in unison. All right, keep moving that low note down chromatically. Until you find yourself on the 7th fret of the D string and the 10th fret of the high E string with the pinky. Okay, so. All right, from there you can hit the strings and fret the 5 chord in a C7 type shape. Okay, so I've got an A7 chord shape, kind of played with my C7 chord shape, just transposed up to the key of A. All right, so frets 12, 11, 12, and 10. All right, really beautiful sound there. Slap strum. All right, I just dragged my pick through and used my middle finger for the last note. All right, to get a little bit of texture in that strum. From there you can resolve down, moving that chord to the 3rd fret position with the index finger to play D dominant 7. Okay, you put that final bit of music together and we have turn around. All right, now let's play through the entire solo and make sure you got it at a slow tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. All right, let's get to the 4. All right, and back to the 1. Let's get to the 5. And resolve down. All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed this lead guitar tutorial and this introduction to the Spark amp from Positive Grid. I really feel comfortable recommending this thing. It sounds great, it's super affordable, and it's also a tremendous tool just for getting those creative juices flowing. So I think once you get this, you're gonna feel really inspired to keep practicing. Now, the app is completely free and also loaded with great jam tracks for you to play along with, and you can record yourself playing with it, which is always a great way to gauge your progress, especially as a lead guitar player. So this thing could not get a stronger seal of approval from me. I'm gonna put a link in the description for you to check it out. Real quick, I wanna thank my patrons for making all these lessons possible. Thanks so much. I hope you're enjoying those extra resources. And thanks to you guys, I got many more lessons coming up, so keep checking in. Please subscribe, please share. This is Rob at Swift Guitar Lessons in Philadelphia, saying happy picking.